Have you guys ever heard that parable about that old man that loses his horse? It's literally called Sai Wang's Lost Horse, or Sai Wang Lost His Horse. So it's about this old guy who loses his horse, and then his neighbors are like, "Oh my God, that's terrible! That's so bad. We're so sorry." And Sai Wang's like, "Yeah, maybe it's bad, maybe it's good. Who knows?" And then the horse comes back and brings back a bunch of wild horses with it. And then the neighbors are like, "Oh my God, that's so good. Congratulations. That's awesome." And then he's like, "Yeah, maybe it's good. Maybe it's bad. I don't know." So then Sai Wang's son breaks his leg trying to tame one of the wild horses. And his neighbors are like, "We're so sorry. That's awful." And Sai Wang's like, "Yeah, maybe." And then the military comes to draft his son, but they don't because he has a broken leg. Moral of the story being, you never know what's good or what's bad in life. And I feel like this is more about the bad in life, because I feel like when bad things are happening to us, it's really easy to, feel forsaken, by God, by the universe, by whatever forces. And I just wanted to offer a little bit of perspective based on my experiences with that, because I find the opposite to be true. I don't think I've ever had a bad thing happen to me that didn't end up being for the greater good in the long run, or like the bigger picture. So, for example, how I met my husband, I use this story a lot because, one, it's the most recent, but I also think it's the most I don't know if obvious is the right word, but it's a really good example of my point. So basically, I lived in LA for 10 plus years, and I had a career there. And then I started dating this man, and uh, long story short, it was probably the most traumatic of all of my relationships, and I have been through some traumatic relationships, so that is saying a lot. But anyway, when it ended, I was just completely and utterly broken in every sense of the word. Um, my career was in the gutter, and my confidence was shattered. It was really bad. And I ended up having to move back in with my parents, back to my hometown. And to me, that was like the ultimate failure, because I'm the kind of person who really used to base my value on my accomplishments. And so then when that happened, I just felt like the biggest failure in the world. And it felt like I was being punished. And I thought, I'll I'll live with my parents for a couple months, and then I'll get back on my feet, and then I'll move back to LA, and everything will be fine. 2 months turned into 5 years, and for the majority of that, I was not having a good time. It was like every day I was like, why is this happening to me? And no matter what I did, like, I just couldn't seem to escape. I couldn't seem to get out of there. Like, my circumstances just wouldn't improve. I wouldn't catch any breaks. I was still doing acting is what I was doing in LA. I was still doing auditions online, because after COVID, everything was online anyway. So me not being physically in Los Angeles wasn't actually as big of a deal as it would have been pre-COVID. So, I was still auditioning several times a week, and I just wasn't booking anything. Like, nothing was working, and I internalized a lot of that rejection, and it really did a number on my confidence. And again, this whole time, I just felt like I was being punished, and I couldn't seem to get myself out of the situation, no matter what I did. And in retrospect, I understand exactly why it needed to happen, and I'm so grateful that it did. But obviously, while I was in it, it was just torture, and it was like years of torture. And basically, being in that situation, one, taught me a lot. After a while, I just made peace with the idea that I was going to be single for as long as I lived there, which was extra difficult because I'd gotten out of a long-term relationship, and it wasn't, I didn't want to be single. I wanted to get married, and I wanted to, build a home with someone and build a family. And, that dream was kind of very violently ripped away from me. And, the whole time I just, I was still yearning for that. I still wanted that deeply, desperately. But I kind of had to come to terms with the idea that that just wasn't going to happen while I was back home, because I've never dated anyone from my hometown. First of all, it's a very small town, and I was always the odd one out. I was always very weird in school, and very eccentric. And I don't know, there just weren't a lot of people on the same wavelength as me in my hometown. And I also wasn't really, I don't know, I guess I didn't want to, what's the word, like tether myself or anchor myself to my hometown, because I knew that I didn't want to be there. I knew that that's not where I wanted to be. So I didn't want to get into a relationship with someone and then, have to leave because it's just not where I want to be. So there were, there was more than one reason as to why I'd kind of decided that I was just going to be single. But man, when I tell you that that was like the biggest blessing for my love life and my relationship to men, and it was just the best thing that could have possibly happened to me. I've talked about this before, but I kind of used to really be very like, I didn't appreciate my family as much as I do now. I didn't appreciate my friends as much as I do now, because I was like, what good is this if I can't have love? Like, it just wasn't as important to me. And when I was in a situation where I knew that I wasn't going to have romance, it kind of made me realize how much love I actually had in my life. And it's just something that I'd always taken for granted before. And it finally opened my eyes, and I was like, man, like, you know, romantic love is great and all, but so is this. This also fills me up. This also feels good. This also, I don't know, I just realized how valuable it was. And that's just something that I was never aware of before. And I feel like that really helped kind of just, it helped me to stop clinging on to this idea of, you know, I needed a man in my life in order to be happy. And that's something that I'd felt throughout my whole life, and I was finally able to let go of that. And I feel like when you finally let go of the thing that you're clinging onto, it finally comes to you. So that was exactly what happened. So, you know, I finally came to peace with that idea, and out of nowhere, you know, on a random night out, and like I said, I hadn't really gone out in my hometown because I left when I was 17. So I was kind of, you know, all of the local spots that everyone knew about and everyone hung out at, I'd never really been until my friends took me there on a night out. And, you know, surely enough, that's where I met my husband. He was in the Royal Air Force, and he had been stationed in my hometown. And everyone seemed to know that, you know, like the Brits were there in the summer, except for me, because I'd never gone out. I'd never seen them. I didn't know that they were there. In retrospect, I can see why everything had to happen that way. Because first of all, I needed to learn to be on my own, because you just can't have a healthy relationship if you're not comfortable enough with yourself to be on your own. It just, I feel like you're never going to be a good partner, because you're always going to like you're going to be overly dependent on someone else to stabilize your emotions. You need to be able to do that on your own. You know, you're always going to lean on you're just always going to be codependent on someone, and that's not conducive to a healthy relationship. Like, you both need to be good on your own before you like come together and intertwine your lives. In retrospect, I can see exactly why the universe just wasn't letting me go. It was because I needed to learn some lessons, first of all, and then I just needed to be there. I needed to be in the right place. And this whole time I thought, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? But it was happening for me. It was happening for my greatest good. I just didn't see it at the time. I couldn't. I was too close. Hindsight is 2020. I will give you another example, and this one is a bit heavier. So my grandpa died a few years ago, and it was a really traumatizing experience for my family and I. I never lost someone that close to me before. And it was a really, obviously like a very difficult experience. But I've learned that even something as catastrophic and agonizing as death can bring blessings, can bring something positive as well. So my grandpa made a lot of mistakes in his life, and he hurt my mom and my grandma a lot. And I know that they'd always harbored resentment towards him. I'd even harbored resentment towards him on their behalf, even though we all loved him. And, it wasn't like unpleasant, but it was always there. It was always like there deep down, you know what I mean? And when he died, like, that, I know for a fact, just like wiped the slate clean for everyone, like for my mom and for my grandma and for myself, because it just, I don't know, it was just replaced by like forgiveness and, sadness, really. But all of that resentment and all of that, like, I feel like we were all just able to finally let it go. And my grandma, I don't know, she'd always been, I mean, it's difficult to kind of like judge a relationship from the outside, because you just never know what's going on behind closed doors or how people actually feel. But it was my like perception or my interpretation, they just didn't seem very happy together, honestly. And towards the end of his life, my grandpa had deteriorated quite a bit. He was in very poor health and had very limited mobility. And so my grandma was essentially his caregiver. And my grandma is still in very good health. She's still active. She, she's very social. My grandma she could be like 20 years younger than her actual age. She's taken very good care of herself, both spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and physically. My grandma's like sharp, she's all there. And I felt like she'd really missed out on a lot of things that she wanted to do, because, she felt like this obligation to my grandpa to, like care for him and always be there for him. And she wouldn't really like go out or anything or travel because he couldn't really come with, and she felt guilty like leaving him on his own. And after he passed, like, she, travels the world now, and she just seems honestly like a lot happier. I feel like good things can come out of really horrible situations, but you do have to make an active effort to like look for the blessings. Because if you can definitely get stuck just feeling sorry for yourself and being angry, and you can be too blind. Like, you can miss opportunities, you can like miss things if you stay in that negative, resentful space. And I'm not saying like don't feel your emotions, because the more that you try to like push your feelings away, the more that they're gonna push back. Let yourself, whenever like those emotions come up, like you need to let yourself feel them. You need to acknowledge them, and you need to let them just be, as horrible as it feels, because the more that you try to push them away, again, they're going to get bigger and stronger, and it's never going to go away until you let yourself process, you know, whatever it is that you're going through. Some things I do when some things I do when I'm feeling really bad. I think the two most important things are get your body moving or take a shower. I think, honestly, I don't know. Like, going for a walk and taking for a shower is like dream combo. I feel like no matter how bad I feel, if I do those two things, I'll feel at least a 50% improvement, which is huge, you know, when you're feeling super low. They're both amazing, but I feel like something about the shower, just spiritually, is like very cleansing. Like, water is very cleansing. It cleanses your aura. I don't know. There's something about water that is like holy, honestly. So if you don't feel like going for a walk, or if you can't or whatever, like just get in the shower and you will feel immediate relief. Something that also helps me feel better is just like getting cozy, you know, putting on some comfortable clothes and lighting a candle and putting on some music. Like, I find that very, very calming and very helpful. And the other thing I do is I either journal or I just like talk to God, like in my head or whatever, you know. I just pray. And even if you're not a spiritual person, journaling still helps a lot, because it helps get all of like your feelings out of your body and onto the paper. I don't know what it is, but something about just writing my feelings down, it helps. Just like, I feel like they're like rattling inside me over and over and over and over. But then when I write them down, it's like they can finally be released. I can finally let them go. I don't know what it is, but something about that. It's the same thing like when I talk to God. I just feel like saying things, just like getting things off of my chest. It's really cathartic. In retrospect, I just find that when something really bad happens, it's like the pieces falling into place. It's like, you know, a Rubik's Cube, if you've ever solved a Rubik's Cube, right before you solve the last piece, you have to like undo. It looks like you're undoing the entire thing, and it looks like when you first started. But then you get to the last turn and everything just like falls into place. I think that whatever it is, it's, you know, it's a lesson, or it's life making space for you. It's life making space for your blessings. But you need to look for them. You need to expect them, and you need to not let yourself get stuck in the negativity. You know, always be looking for the blessing, and just trust that it is for the best. I think that's just the biggest thing, is trusting that no matter that, even if it doesn't feel like it right now, God and the universe loves you, and they're on your side, and they are doing what is best for you ultimately, even if it really doesn't feel like it. Even if it feels like you're being punished, you're not. It is life working for you and falling into place for you. Okay, well, that is it for this video, and I will see you next week.